Hello students, we have reached the third lecture of today's module on mass communication. In the previous lectures, we had learned about what is communication, communication as a social science, the various kinds of communication, the various types of communication, group communication, effects of communication, and so on. In today's module, you will learn how to deal with the basic pedagogy of mass communication, how we use different techniques and theories to study the concept of mass communication. Particularly, you will be acquainted with the mass communication studies which is being used and propagated in India. So, basically, today we will be learning about the effect of information and technology and society through mass communication. That is how the society and the concepts of information and technology are intertwined. Then we'll go through a brief history of mass communication and culture. We'll try to understand the composition of a mass culture, a popular culture, and a folk culture. Having understood the terms, we would go in depth into the functions of mass media, followed by the different theories which are propagated by the theorists of mass media. So basically, in this module, firstly, we will be dealing with the aspects of information technology and society through the medium of mass communication. Now, societies for long have had a desire to find effective ways of reporting environmental dangers and opportunities, circulate opinions, facts, and ideas, and pass along the knowledge, heritage, and lore, as well as communicate expectations to newer members and entertain them in an expensive manner and broaden commerce and trade. So this definition particularly emphasizes on the use of information and technology and the impact it has on the society. So basically, we use the transformation of any information to report. Now, what do we report? We may report environmental dangers. For example, in olden days when the ships used to travel through dangerous sea passages, they used the compass and they used certain markers like the spiraling spire of a church and so on, or they use lighthouses. Now, this in turn gave the need to emphasize on the dissemination of knowledge. So slowly from various advancements, we took into reporting of the environmental dangers through the weather reports. Then we took into the reporting of the environmental dangers through the radio, the frequency machines, and so on. So this is the essential or crucial aspect of dissemination of knowledge, which takes place only through the route of information technology and the tools of mass media. So what is happening is you are circulating your opinions, you are circulating your facts which might prove to be useful to someone. Then your ideas are being floated, you pass along knowledge. So once you have overcome the sea voyage through the different challenges which the sea has thrown to you via the tools of information and technology, what you're doing is you are recording the information and you store the information and use it if and when necessary. Now the retrieving of the information, the stored information, and the dissemination of the stored information forms an integral part of the technology. Now not only it is there to warn you of the imminent environmental threats and dangers, but it also passes you certain facts. So today if you are going to carry an expedition, say in Antarctica, you know through the documented materials which are spread to you via the tools of mass media, you are aware of the pros and cons. So your ideas are passed along, the knowledge is passed along, the heritage, which is the cultural strength of any cultural group, is passed along. So UNESCO has this heritage site, and this heritage sites are nothing but the pockets which are selected by means of mass media and disseminated by means of mass media, underlying the importance of those pockets. Then lores. Lores are the stories or the tales which are attributed to a particular pocket. Those are communicated, the expectations are communicated to whom? To the people around, to the newer members. It's so passed on generation by generation. And what function does it prove? It proves to entertain you in an expensive manner. It not only entertains you, but it broadens your horizons. So there is a direct boom of your trade, commerce, and culture. Now the primary challenge has always been to find ways and means to communicate messages to people, as many as possible. So I need to know prompted innovative ways to get the message to the masses. So in olden India, we had people who would carry the messages of the sandeshas to the designated area. So what the kings used to do, they had messengers who would pass on through a logistic system. So if someone is passing the message on foot, the other person would start running from that post. Then the other person would pass it to the horse and so on. So there was always a need to find out the ways and means through which the message could be communicated. Now, that was just the initial aspect of using manual messengers to pass the message. But as time evolved, so did the evolution of the medium occur. So from the simple means of passing the message via the messengers, now you began to use the printing press. Then from the printing press, we had evolutionary stages of other writing mediums, then radio, newspapers, televisions, and so on and forth. So what is the connecting thread here? The connecting thread here is humans are innately by nature very inquisitive, and there is always a constant need to pass on the messages. So the human beings, they began to develop a logical and strong system through which the information could be passed, and they use the system, or the system came to be known as the use of technology through which the message was disseminated. Now, Marshall McLuhan was a media theorist. He was a Canadian media theorist, and in 1960 he came up with one essay, and in that essay he propagated this idea of humans cultivating or prompting innovative ways to get new messages to the masses by saying that the medium is the message. Now, what do you mean by the medium is the message? So by this McLuhan meant that every medium delivers information in a different way, and that content is fundamentally shaped by the medium of transmission. Every medium delivers information in a different way. Now, radio will only pass you oral information, whereas the television will pass you both audio as well as visual information. So every medium, or medium is what? Medium is the means through which the message is passed. Now Marshall McLuhan insisted that every medium is the message. So the content that is passed through the medium is being fundamentally shaped by the medium of transmission. So if I were to pass a message as a radio byte, so in that particular second in which the message is being passed through the radio byte, my message would be condensed so that it fits to the structure and demands of the radio byte. Then if you are sending it through television, so you just cannot have a blank screen which will just pass on the information. You need to arrange the graphics. If the proper imagery is not available, usually what happens is, if you are reporting something or passing on the message, you need to see that the situation is enacted and there is a synergy between the audio and visual means in the television. Then again, showing something in a radio and television would imply that you are condensing the information to suit that particular time span. So if a treatise or a report is of say 250 pages, it is not effectively passed through the radio or the television because you might miss up on certain crucial details. But what happens to the message that is received by the receiver? The receiver will start the process of encoding and decoding the message as it is sent, which is why Marshall McLuhan said that the medium is the message and that the content is fundamentally shaped by the medium of transmission. Now to McLuhan, all media were the extension of man. Man needed ways in which he could use the technology to pass on certain information. Now for McLuhan, he said that all media were basically an extension of man. So the printing press, according to him, was considered to be an extension of the eye because it allowed people to see reality in discrete units, to find causal relation, structure and order in nature. So if you are typing a news, so it is the extension of the human eye because in that pocket, in that discrete unit, you are passing the maximum amount of information that you can pass. So, according to McLuhan, the printing press is an extension of the eye. When you read a news, not only are you visually engaging with the news, but you are trying to conceptualize the news in your mind, grasp whatever is said. So not only the medium is passed through the message is passed through the medium, but also the content of the medium directs the transmission. So this is the gist of information and technology in the Indian society as well. For example, today, if you are watching a particular show, say a teleseries, where people are trying to instill in you the virtues of ancient families, ancient concepts of kinship and war. So you have Ramanan Sagar's teleseries of the Ramayana, then you have the Mahabharata, which are showcased to you via television. So a printed book of the Ramayana, a printed book of the Mahabharata is being transmitted to the Indian context via the mode of television. So the book here is already a mode or medium of transmission, and further the television also acts as the medium of transmission. So what is happening? You are extending your eye, you are extending from your sensory skills to motor skills, and from there you are mirroring whatever is being shown to you. So the impact of information technology in society is huge, and it forms a detrimental connecting point between the tools of mass media. Now, when we talk about the early innovation processes which people use to pass messages, the early phase actually saw the messengers being manual messengers who were trying to send the information. So the manual messengers used to send the information, and these manual messengers used to travel from place to place and see that the message is passed. But there were dangers to that process. And what were the dangers? Sometimes the messenger could have got shot or could have got killed. So it was not clear whether the message was authentically passed or not. Sometimes the messenger might make mistakes in understanding the message, so the actual gist of the message might not get passed. So to do away with all of that, the actual evolution of dissemination of knowledge came in the early half of 15th century. So Johannes Gutenberg, as we know, set up the first printing press. So his invention of the movable type of printing press was a great invention to mankind, because books that were painstakingly written and which had only one or two copies, because writing a book takes time. So the books were painstakingly written and no two copies were exactly the same. And there were factors why a book might differ. Probably the attention span might differ, probably the handwriting is different, and so on. So when the printing press was initially invented, they started delivering copies of Bible. Now the printing press made the mass production of print media possible. So by and large, huge amounts of books were now getting printed at a faster pace. Now, not only was it cheaper to produce written material, but new transportation technologies also made it easier for text to reach a wider audience. So, the writing material just needed ink. Now, ink was efficiently created by the use of indigo, by the use of other dyes, and the printing press got started. Now, once the printing press was in action, the copies which were produced at the rate of one or maximum two were now being produced at a mass rate. Now at that point of time, there was also the advent of faster transformation of messages. So the massively produced books were being ferried or being shipped to far off places. Now what is happening? There is a faster logistics and there is a faster production of the book. Now, not only it was cheaper to produce the written material, but of course, thanks to the different transportational technologies, people now were gaining more and more information. So, what is happening? The knowledge database is enriched, the quench for knowledge or the thirst for knowledge is satiated, and so on. Now, in 1810, another German printer by the name of Friedrich Koenig pushed media production even further, where he essentially hooked the steam engine up to a printing press, enabling the industrialization of the printed media. Now, what was happening? The mechanical process of printing was good. It was producing, but the demands were more. So, to meet that, they started using modes of industrialization to further upgrade the process. Now, what happened as a result of that? When they connected a steam engine, imagine the steam engine which runs on coals and has the capacity to pull an engine to miles at a stretch. Now, the steam engine, if it is connected to the printing press, imagine the marvelous amount of production that the printing press would do. So, by then, the rate at which the books were produced doubled more than ever. So in 1800, a hand-operated printing press machine could produce about 480 pages per hour. Koenig's machine more than doubled this rate. Okay, so if 480 pages were being printed by a hand-operated printing machine, when the steam engine was being connected to it, the rate doubled. So by 1930s, many printing presses could publish 3,000 pages an hour. This increased efficiency and it went hand in hand with the rise of the daily newspaper. Now, if it is publishing 3,000 pages in an hour, imagine the kind of knowledge flow you are getting. But human beings are very hungry for knowledge by nature. So what did they do? They started getting in more and more materials to send. So the messages were now being segregated, the messages were being clubbed together and printed more in a faster manner, and that is how the daily newspaper came into being. Now, by 19th century, that was the peak period of industrialization, the newspapers, they began as the primary means of disseminating and receiving information. So, newspapers were being printed on a daily basis. So, if 3,000 pages are approximately printed in a newspaper, an average newspaper would just have 5 to 6 copies. So, immediately you could have a production of 500 to 600 newspapers as a prompt basis. So, the dissemination and receiving of information took a faster pace during the peak period of industrialization. Then, with that, the invention of the telegraph in 1844 transformed the print media. The new technology enabled the transformation of information within a matter of few minutes, allowing more timely and relevant reporting. So, when the telegraph was invented in 1844, the print media got a further boost. So what was happening is information which took time to be transferred or which took time to be printed were now being done in a matter of minutes. So from an hour, the production rate had fastened up and dropped to a minute. Now allowing what? More timely and relevant reporting, because the messages were being transferred so quickly. You had a streamlined and constant flow of the messages, and it was useful because you began to report it in a faster manner. Then broadcast radio came into the scene by the 1920s. The introduction of technologies of mechanical reproduction such as the phonograph, the photography and cinema also created newer opportunities for disseminating images to wider audience with increased power and immediacy. Now people were not happy with just passing the message. So the printing press came into being. With the printing press came the process of not just publishing selected books, but also publishing it on a daily basis via newspapers. Now with that, you have your the publication along with the newspapers. You had the telegram. Now the telegraph was instrumental in fastening the print media. Then again with that, you saw the introduction of broadcasting media into the scene. Now when photographs were clicked by the Lumiere brothers, they had already syntaxed it to the form where now your information can be captured in a film type. Then the film phase came, the movie phase came. Now the first movies, they were just pictures with no sound, there was no color, it all came in black and white. It was just an extension of the film. So you have simple films like the smiling of a baby, or how you click a photograph and when the photograph is clicked, the negatives burn. So the constant urge to expand went on and people went on finding newer and innovative ways of handling technology and disseminating the messages. So mechanical reproduction created a wider audience. So each society now started having its own theatre, where once a week the entire community would gather and watch a film. Now what required of the film were the roles to be mechanically pushed into the projector and it would be displayed. Then the invention of recording and development of telegraphy and wireless gave a vast significance to the oral communications. So visual communication was already expanding, but then the invention of the telephone, the telegraph and so on, and the wireless technology where coded information could be quickly passed on, it also gave a heightened emphasis to the oral communication. The invention of telephone was a great advance on the telegraph, which allowed direct spoken communication. So hello was the first word which was uttered through the telephone. Now from telegraph again, it got further advanced into the telephone. Now we come to the newer innings, that is the fourth wave. Now here the wireless broadcasting of both speech and music was established in many parts of the world by the first half of the 20th century, and it was rapidly becoming an integral part of our life. So the broadcasting of speech via the wireless technology and the broadcasting of music became an integral part of transmission, because by then what was happening is the radio or the other means of transmission became an integral part of the human life. What happened as a result of which it gave a new challenge to the print medium. The broadcasters could at the same time beat the printed newspapers in the immediacy of their coverage and occupy the leisure time that might have otherwise been devoted to reading of books. So for a news to get into the masses, what happened by this period? People started using the other modes, which is even evident today. Now, if you have to get your daily dose of newspapers, till few decades back, you still had to wait and you have to wait and see whether the news gets published or not in the next day's edition. If there is a dropout, then you have to wait again so that the issue is propagated. So what was happening was, when print media was there, the focus of people was only into reading the news, which was trying to pick up pace from being published from fortnightly to weekly to daily, up to the process where once you were done reading the newspaper, all you had to do was to read books. Now, when wireless technology brought in a stronghold into the broadcasting scenario, what happened was, people started listening to music in their spare time. So people started watching the movies. Now, this served as a greater threat towards the print medium. Now, from very tentative beginnings in 1936, television became, within a period of more or less than 30 years, the most universal and most powerful medium of communication. Then cable TV was also invented. Now, then you have the satellite images being transmitted to you directly into your television. So in India, we had the INSAT satellites and all, which was passing on the information. Now, what was happening was that people were again not happy with just the passing of information, just the usage of an advanced mode of print media or just watching films. They needed more. So internet came into being. So what is happening today with the help of internet? The news which we would read the next day, we are getting updates in minutes, we are getting updates in hours. So emergence of the internet as a network communication also further strengthened the technological advancements, and it provided a new paradigm to the complete mass media. So suddenly, from passing information to, from mere messengers, the internet started up the boom. So there was a paradigm shift, a phenomenal shift from where the process of dissemination of message initially started to where it had reached up to the current scenario. Now, let us look into the timeline of the mass mediums. So, in the late 1400s, the development of printing in China occurred, which spreaded up to Europe. The first newspaper was printed in the 1600s, and the first magazine was printed somewhere around the 1700s. So, first it started off with China, later on it spread towards the different parts of Europe. Now, Chinese literature is very strong in terms of the stories or the lores they disseminate about the printing process. So there's a story about this particular Chinese princess who cries when she accidentally drops a silkworm in a cup of hot water, and the silkworm starts unweaving its thread. So the princess gets scared and the princess rushes to her mother. Now the clever lady starts spinning cotton out of it. Then they started dyeing it and they started painting their relics on those cotton sheets. So printing basically had its first development in China, and later on it passed to Europe, and then again you have Gutenberg, who carried along by publishing the highest number of copies of the Bible. And trust me, even today Bible has the highest publication you could have ever seen. Then the 1800s saw media developing through the rise of technology. So in 1800s we saw the creation of the photograph. We were talking about the timeline and the manner in which the mass medium started developing. So, in the late 1400s, we've spoken on how the early developments were seen in China, then it spread towards parts of Europe, and later on, we did have the first newspaper which was printed in 1600s and the first magazine in the 1700s. By 1800s, the media developed into the current media which we see through the rise of technology. So photographs were created, then there was the creation of the telephone. Now the creation of photographs enabled that the message which was being passed could now be stored appropriately, and that message could be seen again and again by both the sender and the receiver whenever they felt like. The creation of the telephone enabled a exchange in the oral communication in a faster manner. So, if you were sitting in a certain pocket of the globe and you needed to send a message miles away, now the age-old process of writing letters, and in many cases the letters would not even reach this designated place. So we have the telephone. Now with the connection of the telephone, you could easily connect someone from one end to the other, and so on. Then the creation of cinematography, phonograph, etc. enable that the messages were now being developed into more intellectual mode, and these mass media tools were helping in the dissemination of the message. Then you have the first advertising agency by early 1800s. So people now started realizing that it is essential for a quick propagation of the messages, and since the technological modes assisted them in quick propagation, now it could also be used to boost the normal trade and commerce. So by early 1900s, the first form of modern media was developed. Now the first feature film was shown, then the first portable phonograph was invented, then radio is invented. Now with radio, there was setting up of different air frequencies, and the emergence of the radio stations came into being. Now what happened in the mid 1900s? The first television broadcasting took place and color TV was introduced in the market, specifically in the United States of America. Now newspapers and magazines were now slowly becoming digitalized, and so were the advertisements. The late 1900s saw the introduction of the computer. Now with the introduction of the computer, the rise of the internet also happened. Then the portable computers enabled the scientists to perform functions, but there was a difficulty in the initial phase because the mainframes of the computers were very huge. Then you have various videos and DVDs and the rise of the computer games. With that came the introduction of your cable TV. Now with the cable TV, specifically in India, there was a sudden surge of people buying television sets, because now direct transmission of the medium was taking place, and they were not just stuck to watching plain old Doordarshan, but now they got a variety of channels through the satellite transmission that was taking place via cable TV and satellite Sky TV. The compact discs were also developed. The early 2000s saw that the newspaper and advertising and newspaper sales had a slight decline, because interactive media started developing. So earlier you had this section in your newspaper where classifieds would be there, where job opportunities would be there. So that came into a standstill because the interactive media started taking a broader domain. So with the rise of internet and the rise of digital films and TVs, the propagation of information became more and more stronger. Now the advancement of electronic music, films, etc. were also seen in the early 2000s. Now let's go into the concept of mass media and culture. So the term mass media was coined around 1920s with the advent of a nationwide radio network and of a mass circulation through the circulation of newspapers and magazines. So the term mass media, which was coined in the early 1920s, comprised of basically two terms: the masses and the transmission of information via the mediums. So as a result of which there was a nationwide boom across various globes, and with that you had your radio networks, then you had mass circulation of the newspapers and magazines. Then mass media are significant transmitters of cultural messages, and they also play an influential role in shaping the culture. So today if I want to show you about the cultural conditions of a particular culture group, with the help of mass media I can easily show you. So today you have channels like TLC, your lifestyle channels, entertainment channels, which take care of your different segments. For example, news channels which cater to the Sensex and all are strictly concerned with just passing on your economic information needs. So you have Economic Times Network and so on, just passing you the information you need for your finances. Then again, if you want to know about a particular country and its culture, sitting in one corner of the globe, you have people who have this travelogue, who have this various kinds of travel shows which they host, and through it they pass on the necessary information. So what is happening? Sitting in one corner of the globe, you are learning about different cultures, and it does not imply that you necessarily need to travel to those pockets to learn about the culture. So what's happening here is that you are becoming aware of their cultures by sitting in one corner of the globe, and that is done through the aid of mass media. It seizes the cross-cultural boundaries and promotes globalization. Now we live in a stage where the advent of globalization has enabled that we go beyond the boundaries. So if a particular country is in a conflict with a particular nation, then what happens is we tend to promote the goodness of that particular conflicted nation. See the scenario. So there is a ceaseless doing away of the global boundaries. So your inhibitions disappear. People become more open, sharing of ideas, their cultures, the beliefs, and so on. Then the moods and attitudes of the society are influenced by messages delivered through mass media channels. So moods and attitudes, you see that certain attitudes are being propagated through the television. For example, if today there is a need to create a attitude of social cleanliness, a social drive, a drive against a good change for a good cause, you have those mediums trying to transfer that message in your head. So the mood and attitudes of our society are influenced by the messages that are delivered through mass media channels. So in India, you had these programs like the teleseries, the Ekta Kapoor T series. So they were all about transmitting the Indian values or the Indian systems in a modern context. So no doubt Ramayana and Mahabharata did send the messages, but to visualize it or conceptualize it in the current Indian scenario, the makers of that particular series tried to do so by bringing in those values in the day-to-day life situation of the individual. Then you also have situations where you see like Amitabh Bachchan hosting the Kaun Banega Crorepati shows. Now what is happening there? Or Shah Rukh Khan hosting Kya Aap Panchvi Paas Se Tez Hai. So all those were based on your general knowledge, your idea about your current affairs, your day-to-day affairs, and it was also giving an economic boost by the certain amount of prize money the person got. Then there were issues like Satyamev Jayate and all, which dealt about the various social issues which drive to a point in the society where people either need to take actions or take stock of the situations. So Satyamev Jayate took stock of issues like female infanticide, the Northeast episode dealt with the discriminations people from the northeastern pockets of India face. Then they had issues on corruption. So basically, these issues help the younger minds to mold and the older minds to understand the problems which has been ravaging the country from quite a long period of time. So this is what mass media actually does to the culture. It influences the mood. For example, if you're very tired today, you might say, I want to relax by watching a movie. I want to watch a light movie. Then there was also a phase when you had laughter channels, you have stand-up comedy. So every night you would have a slot dedicated where people would just talk about funny incidents. So the moods and attitudes are strongly determined by the mass media channels. Now we come to the concept of mass culture. Now what is mass culture? Mass culture, before we go into it, let me tell you, it is not connected to one small elite group of people. The very term mass implies there's a huge quantity. The mass culture is the generalized culture, the generalized quantity. So, mass culture is basically the set of ideas and values that develop from a common exposure to the same media, news sources, music and art. So, you have a mass culture. For example, there was this issue of hero worshipping. Now what happened when, for example, there's this mass frenzy, a mass culture that every time a Rajnikant movie is being released, people hold massive abhishekams or pujas. Now what they do, they literally hero worship Rajnikant. They install huge caricatures or cutouts of Rajnikant and they pour liters and liters of milk. Why? To show their obeisance towards Rajnikant. So mass culture is basically the propagation of the certain ideas, the certain values that develop from a common exposure. Now what is the common exposure? When you see TV, for example, when we were small, when we used to see mythological serials like the Ramayana, Mahabharata or Hanuman or Bal Ganesh and all, we used to see our grandparents used to worship the actors who used to be seen on the screen. Now why? Firstly, because they are mirroring what message it is being passed, and secondly, it is exposing them to their religious values, and they soon learn to attach themselves to the characters. Then you have news sources which are highly determinant on controlling situations. For example, India as a democratic country has different political parties with different political affiliations and ideologies. So mass media, the role of mass media as a channel is to see that the news which is being propagated is edited and sent or let out to the masses in such a manner that they could avert a clash or a tragedy. So goes on with music and art. You see, recently the movie Padmavati was not asked to be released because apparently it was thought to hurt the sentiment of the Rajputs. Now it went through the entire phase. So what happened? The mass mindset was at work. The mass culture, the Karni Sena, without even seeing the movie, they started protesting. They sent death threats. Some committed suicide, and so on. So once the movie was released, you have the same Karni Sena coming and apologizing to the people, saying that the movie didn't defile the Rajput culture, but they added a sense of pride, instilled a sense of pride amongst the Rajput women. So art, culture, you see paintings of M.F. Hussain were banned at one point of time due to the allegations that there were an explicit sense of nudity which should be seen across his work. But then again, you do see certain artists whose works, even if it's on a very outrageous topic, is still being appreciated. Why? Because the mass culture tends to develop over a period of time. Now, considered as a repository for social meaning, mass culture is one of terms that includes high culture or elite culture. Mass is not limited to one small group. It is huge. It has avant-garde culture. Some pronounce it as avant-garde, but usually it is avant-garde. Then you have folk culture, the popular culture, and subsequently the postmodern culture. So mass culture will also lead to trends in the society. For example, there was this trend where at one point of time there were Dadaist paintings, then came cubic paintings, then came different other superfluous paintings like the surrealism mode of painting and so on. So mass culture keeps on building up as time progresses, and that is how the culture gets disseminated among the masses, and it forms a part of their own ideology. It is an integral part of their own value system. Then we come to popular culture. Now, what is popular culture? Popular culture is a set of beliefs, practices, and objects that broadly embody the shared meanings of a social system. Now, in India, if we talk about popular culture, the very first thing that comes into our mind is Bollywood. Why? Because Bollywood is instilling in you a certain belief, a certain practice, a certain objectification. So it is a shared system where group of actors, set of actors will eventually transmit the knowledge of the from ancient India to the current Indian scenario through the films which they showcase. So it is a shared belief system. Now it includes media objects, entertainment, leisure, fashion and trends, and linguistic conventions among others. Media objects, entertainment, the leisure, fashion and trends. You always have a page dedicated to leisure, fashion and trends, usually in the almost the last half of the newspaper. So it goes for the the magazines, or if you have television programs, you see that certain segments of the day are structured only for the leisure, fashion and trend, because they feel that probably that time is appropriate to pass on the information. Then you have linguistic conventions among the other things. Now, the association of popular culture with mass culture leads to focus on the position of popular culture with a capitalist mode of economic production. So once popular culture takes its place in mass culture, it leads to a position where the popular culture with a capitalist mode of production will enable the commodities to be processed through capitalist terms. So popular culture is seen as a set of commodities produced through capitalistic processes driven by a profit motive and sold to consume. Now, Bollywood is the popular culture which we tend to associate with the Indian film industry. So, this Indian film industry is doing what? It is producing films. The Central Board of Film Certification is monitoring those films for you. Now, as they are monitoring the films for you, they are seeing that it is meeting certain set standards, it is meeting to certain set qualities and so on. Now the process of making a film nowadays is almost a job of hundreds to 200 crores. Now you need to earn the revenue, the amount of money which has been massively used for the creation of that movie. So what you do when the movie is, before the movie is released, you have interactive sessions. So people from the Bollywood fraternity goes and engages with people in malls, contests are being held, opinions are being written, and comparisons are being done, and finally when the movie is released, again feedback is taken as to how the receiver or the audience has accepted the movie or not. So this is a capitalistic process. It keeps on going on. The rich already has the revenue. It makes a film with the minimal part of the revenue, and in turn gets double, triple manifolds of revenue from the masses. Now, popular culture is also seen as a practice by artists or other kinds of culture makers that results in performance and objects that are received and interpreted by audience both within and beyond the cultural groups. So the popular culture could also be seen as a set of practice where artists of other cultures, for example, when you have this singing shows, for example, Coke Studio and all, what happens is they are trying to revive and modernize the already existing songs. So you have people from different globes, artists from Pakistan, artists from other parts of the nation, the globe, who come together and they perform, and those objects are interpreted and received by the audience both within the subcultural group of gathering which is happening in the Coke Studio, or it's happening to the Indian masses, but it goes to the Pakistani masses, it goes on worldwide. So this is the popular culture. Now we'll see the key issues of analysis of popular culture. The key issues in the analysis of popular culture include the representation of specific groups and themes in the content of cultural objects and practices. So you represent certain groups, like the Padmavati example which I had given. It is representing the Rajput community as large. Then the themes in content of cultural objects or practices. So along with showcasing the Rajput community, it is showing the practices of sati, which is being committed, and so on. Then the practice of Johar, when sati is the self-immolation which takes place on the funeral fire. But in Johar, when she knows that the husband is not coming back, he has died in the war field, she goes on to end up her life in honor of her husband. It's better for her to end in that current mindset. It was the most sensible thing that she could do. So you not only represent the popular culture but of a specific group, but you also deal with the themes and contents of the cultural objects. Then the role of cultural production as a form of social reproduction. Now socially you are picking on issues. For example, you see documentaries where the practice of khatna is usually condemned. Now what is khatna? Khatna is the process where the female genital mutilation takes place. So it is practiced mostly in African countries and all, but it's also practiced amongst the Bohri community in India. So the cultural production as a social reproduction is seen, where the cultural practice, its pros and cons, are socially seen in the pockets, and that is being reproduced through your medium and transferred to the audience, so they now decide whether it's a good practice or bad practice. The extent to which audiences exercise agency is determining the meaning of the culture that they consume. So if the audience is very aware and it wants to take proactive measures against certain wrongdoings of the society, then it means that the culture in which the audience sets in is a informed culture. So similarly, there might be a conservative audience who thinks that things which have been going on since times of yore should not be tempered. So there are variations, and the extent to which the audience would exercise the agency in determining the meaning of culture also reflects the kind of culture they consume. Now we come to folk culture. Now folk culture refers to the product and practices of social groups and is associated with tradition, historical continuity, sense of place and belonging. Now if mass culture was generalized, folk culture is centralized. Now where is it centralized? It is centralized to the pockets, the cultural pockets which it deals with. So the folk culture of Assam would be different from the folk culture of, say, Maharashtra, and it would be different from the folk culture of Gujarat. So what is happening? You are prioritizing and focusing on the culture of a particular linguistic pocket. So here you not only deal with the traditions, the age-old rituals, dictums, totems, but you see the historical continuity, the sense of place and belongings of the social groups. For example, in Maharashtra, you see that the Parsi people, they stay both in Maharashtra and Gujarat, and they are the social groups who are very small in number. Now you see their own traditions, so they float their own historical continuity, how they came into the Indian context. So there's this story which floats that there was this Persian prince who was questioned by a Indian ruler as to why they were staying there, and he wanted them to leave India. Then the prince said that, allow me, kind sir, to take a glass of milk. So in that milk he poured a spoonful of sugar, stirred it and said, Your Majesty, this is India and my people will remain inside your country and they will not interfere, and I promise you there will not be much seen, but they will promote sweetness, unity and harmony amongst the Indian brotherhood. So that's how the Parsi community's initial origins came to be floated. So there's a sense of place, there's a sense of belonging. Now, folk culture is manifested through songs, dance, storytelling, and mythology, vernacular design in buildings, everyday artifacts and clothing, diet, habits, social rules and structures, work practices such as farming, craft production, religion, worldviews. So it's manifested in the song. Your songs will have many historical information in the lyrics itself. Your dance would tell you a huge amount of historical continuance. Why this particular form of dance form was invented, why is it done this way. Then you have storytelling methods. For example, in Karnataka we have Yakshagana. In northern part of India, we have kirtans where the story of Ram, Ravan, Lakshman, Sita and all the characters are being told. Why? Because there is a need to tell, impart the knowledge, gain the knowledge. Then mythology is there. Now in mythology, the mythological tales also act as imaginary guiding points for a proper functioning of a society. Then vernacular designs in buildings. So if you see that, say in a city like Mumbai, if you go to parts of South Bombay, you will find, say, an Afghan War Memorial Church. So in the structures, you will see the history of that time. For example, the structure of the church spire is so tall that you find it almost unnecessary as to why a tall structure as this is required in South Bombay. But when you go and study the folk history of it, you come to know that when the permission was granted for the construction of the church, it was granted with one condition in mind, that the church spire should be so tall that when the ships enter the Mumbai harbor, they can see from far, and the spire should act as an indicator. So you have those designs which you see in your buildings, in your everyday artificates. For example, in clothing, for example, the chicanery work which you see in Lucknowi clothing, or the Kantha prints and so on, you see, will remind you of the heritage that particular product is endorsing. Your diet, your food habits, the social rules, structures, work practices such as farming, craft production, religion and worldviews. Now folk culture are also precious survival tools and relics from bygone cultures transmitted orally through the generations. So in folk culture, not only are you understanding the concept that these are passing on to you the various rich traditions of yore, but these are also modes by which it gets preserved from generations thereon. So folk culture is evident in multiplicity of local cultures, reworking as individuals, social groups, etc., which creatively makes the sense of circumstances in which they live in. Now, conceptions of folk culture not only informs long-standing themes of landscape, region and place within our cultural geography, but it also speaks of more recent concerns with identity, habit, indigenous knowledge, diasporas, heritage, ethnicity and hybridity. So for example, if you are conducting a study on the folk culture in the northeastern part of India. Now when you go into the pockets, the tribal pockets, you will realize that the identity, the habit, the indigenous knowledge, the medicines which these people use are not the allopathic medicines which you get in the market, but these are from the natural plants which they use. So then the diaspora, the people from that pocket who learns things, goes out of their protected community comes back and gives that information, the heritage, the authenticity, and the hybridity of this mixed culture is all studied under folk culture. Now let's see the folk dances of India. So, for example, in Jammu and Kashmir, you have the roof dance. The Nyopa dances practiced in Ladakh. The Dhanyal dance comes from Haryana. Pangri dance comes from Himachal Pradesh. Chapali dance is from Uttarakhand. Bhangra is from Punjab. Nautanki is seen in Uttar Pradesh. Ghumar dance is seen in Rajasthan. Bhojali still dance is from Madhya Pradesh. Karma dance is from Madhya Pradesh. Then you have the Dhunuchi Nach from West Bengal. The Chirao dances of Mizoram. The Lai Machba dance of Manipur. Then in Assam we have Bihu. Then you have Singhi Cham dance from Sikkim, the bamboo dances of Nagaland as well as in Meghalaya, then the Dandiyas of Gujarat, the Garbas of Gujarat, then the Lejim dance of Maharashtra. You also have Lavani, which is a form of erotic dance form of Maharashtra, as they say. Then the dance of the fishermen of Goa, Yakshagana dance, which is a very important dance form of Karnataka, where when you perform Yakshagana, you also tell the stories of the people of your tribe. Like Bihu, in Bihu we have Husoris. Now Husoris will imply the small stories which are telling you of the culture, the heritage, the diaspora of the Assamese community. Then you have Uttam Tukal dance of Kerala and Pukala Tray dance of Tamil Nadu. So these are the typical folk dances of India. Now let's see the popular folk instruments. Now instruments are necessary in order to pass on the message in a manner which is more appealing to the masses. It should keep you engrossed. So this is a map. I have taken it from Meraki. Now in this map you see this is the Pan-Asia map, the Pan-Indian map, I'm sorry. Now you see in the northeastern pockets you have the seven sisters including Sikkim. Now in Assam you have Dhul, Pepa, Gogona, Taul, Bahi and Hutuli. These are all windpipe instruments, and the Dhul is the drum which the people play. In Meghalaya, bamboo is abundantly formed. So you see how people make use of the existing materials and carve out the things which they can locally and ethically. So that is the strength of folk culture. In Meghalaya, people use bamboo flute, the dimphong violin. In Sikkim, you have the cymbals, the drums. Arunachal uses drums. Nagaland, you have the flutes and trumpets of all kinds, and so on. Then you have Nagara, Namjhari, Murchi, Dhol in Jharkhand. Then in Tripura, you have the folk organ of the Sumui. Then in Bihar, people use the Nagara, the flute, the clappers. In Uttarakhand, we see dhol, dholki, thali, and so on. Himachal, over there, you see the Doru, the Nagara dhols, the Hudak, the Ghantas, and the Gariwalis. In Punjab, of course, people use tumbis, chimtas and all. In Haryana, of course, the dholaks, the manjiras, chimtas, garahas. And in Rajasthan, people prefer the dholaks along with indigenous instruments like khartal to create that melodious sound. In Gujarat, you have Sundari, Morshang, then Jodia Pawa, and in Maharashtra, we use the dholak, the manjira, the tuntuni, the daf, and so on. So you see that each of the instruments in Kerala, they use the chenda, the edaka, the kombu, the mirzavu. So you see the names are also in tune with the folk culture, which is being shown. Now, along with it, you are seeing the materials which are being used with the availability of the resources to create those materials. Then we have the popular folk songs. These songs are huge because it is through these songs that it is through the lyrics of these songs that a whole historical continuity is carried out. The songs will have meanings which will pass on the information necessary. So, in Jammu and Kashmir, you have the Ladisha, the Sufiana Kalam, and the Hafiz Nagmas. Now, Nagmas are very melodious songs, folk songs. Then in the northeastern pockets, for example, you have Bihu songs, Boro and Karbi songs, missing songs in Assam. Then in Manipur, you have the Kulang Ishti. In Nagaland, people sing the Heriku. Then in Jharkhand, people sing traditional songs like Jhumar, Jhumle, Mardana, and so on. Then you see in Chhattisgarh, people sing the Bihav, the Gaura, Khudwa, Pathoni songs. In Maharashtra, we have people who sing Lavani songs and the Abhangs, the Gondals, and Tamashas. Then in Goa, we have Thekni, Fugri, Dhale, and Mando, and so on. So what is happening is you are passing on your ancestral heritage, your historical heritage, your warriors, the need to preserve your race, everything through these melodies, the tals, the pans, and so on. So these is again taken from Meraki, and it's a pan-Indian illustration of the various folk songs that we have in India. Now, what is the difference between a folk culture and a popular culture? Now, remember that the folk culture is used with a very low level technology, whereas the popular culture is mass produced. Folk culture will be constricted to the pocket. For example, Bihu is constricted only to Assam. In Tamil Nadu, the Pans, the Pulayers, it's constricted only to Tamil Nadu. So it's not mass culture, it's constricted to certain pockets. If this is constricted to the northeastern pocket, this is constricted to the Deccan pocket of the country. So it has a very low level of technology. You do not need a high-tech instrument to produce a Bihu song, or you don't need a very high-tech instrument to sing your tals. A cymbal is sufficient, a harmonium is sufficient. Low level of technology is used. Then it is mass-produced. The popular culture is for the masses. Hero worshipping takes place. It is huge. It covers a large scale basis. For example, Bollywood films caters to a huge mass audience, and it is an industry in itself. So high level of technology is used. In folk culture, the local materials are used. So it is transmitted interpersonally, whereas in popular culture, it is a global environment. The Bollywood films which get released in India are also released at later dates worldwide. It's released in Malaysia, it's released in China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, America, and so on. Then folk music is stable, conservative, and traditionalist, whereas the popular culture is transmitted through mediums such as books and TV. Now, folk culture is based on the shared idea of a community. So, the shared mutual experiences of the community, the mutual obligations are seen. Whereas in popular culture, it is based on the idea of society at large. It is specialized roles and its interdependence and interpersonal coordination. Then you have clear-cut social roles. You have a division of labor, be it a male division or a female division. Every folk culture has its own division of labor. Then uh, the popular culture is flexible and vague and consists of vague social roles. Now, folk culture is adapted to a particular environment, whereas in cases of popular culture, it is not adapted from any particular environment. It is free-flowing, rigid, and the ideas are global. Now we come to the important functions of mass media. Now, mass media basically has the following functions: the function of surveillance, the function of correlation, the function of sensationalization, entertainment, transmission, mobilization, and validation. Surveillance in mere terms implies that it serves as the eyes and ears for those seeking information about the world. The correlation would be how media would present the facts that we use to move throughout the world. Then sensationalization would be when the media puts forward the most sensational messages to titillate the customers. So you give bit by bit updates to keep your people engrossed. Then entertainment, the media outlets such as People Magazine, TMZ, blogs like Paris Hilton's blogs keep consumers up to date with their favorite celebrities. Transmission, mass media is a vehicle through which you send out cultural rules, values, norms, and habits. Then there is the concept of mobilization. Now, with instant access to media and technology and information, we can collectively witness the same events taking place in real time somewhere. So, validation occurs when in mass media you try to validate the existing status and norms of a particular movement, organization, or product. Now let us deal with all of these functions in detail. Now what is surveillance? Now an important function of the media is to keep up a surveillance of all that is happening. That is, media acts as the watchdog to the society. It upgrades people about the ongoings of the world and it provides information to the human society. Then media has the responsibility of providing news and covering a wide variety of issues that is of some service to the society. Now media will also help you to provide certain instructions on what has to be done in times of crisis, thereby reducing confusion among the masses. So, in times of curfews, the media you keep on listening to the radio, and then you try to understand how you should act at certain point of time, when you should go out, when you should buy your rations, when you have to step inside the house, when you have to switch off the lights, and so on. So in terms of, for example, if there's a natural disaster or a war or a health care, etc., it is the role of the media to create an awareness by providing information on what is happening and the ways and means by which this disaster can be faced. Now, correlation of the parts of society is another function of the media. Now, with the correlation function, the function relates to how media selection of certain news and its interpretation affects how society understands and responds to it. For example, the media news that a particular singer in recent times say he has been charged by media about say child molestation, when he tries to pass a kiss on a child who is meagerly say around 10 to 12 years of age. Now, by the entire PAN community, it is considered as amounting to the assault. But again, the place from where the child hails, according to her, the cultural norms where she has been raised, probably there that is not seen as that much of an assault, or probably there is a sense of shame which would be associated later on and ruin the reputation of the child. So you have people into all segments and opinions. So now what media does, media selects the news and interprets it in ways which will see the effects of it in the society, how people understand it, how people of different pockets respond to it. Then people's attitudes towards political issues, events, public policies, etc. are influenced to an extent by how the media frames and presents the issue in their discussions and presentations. For example, the media reporting on the war in Vietnam played a significant role in changing the mindset of the Americans who started opposing in the sending of soldiers to fight a losing war. So there was a constant deployment of soldiers by the American forces in Vietnam, but it was a lost cause. And who brought that into picture? The media. Then you have transmission. Now, transmission refers to the ability of the media to teach the various norms, rules and values that exist in society and ensures its transfer from one generation to the next. So when transmission happens, the ability of the media to teach the various norms, rules and values that are already existing in the society is seen as transferred from one generation to other. Now, television programs by and large reflect the society in which they are broadcasted, and they promote the understanding of the society's cultural heritage. For example, there was a boom in the teleseries like Kyuki Saasvi Kabhi Bahu Thi and Kahani Ghar Ghar Ki and all. All of these dealt with the Indian value system. So what happens is you are getting an understanding of the society's cultural heritage. Then children's television programs are designed to showcase good behaviors and standards which children can learn by watching. For example, say a show like a show like Lassie, a show like Full House, Seventh Heaven, Brady Bunch. These shows appropriately promote family values in different settings. So transmission will ensure that through it children learn. Or you have children who learn nursery rhymes through the engagement of listening to certain programs which are specially broadcasted for them. So BBC does that. So usually the transmission will take care of the fact that the right norm, rules, values that exist in the society is passed on from one generation to the other. Entertainment. When we call media, the segment of entertainment is practically detachable from media. So entertainment is the popular function of mass media, where it refers to the ability of media to help people relax and create a means of escape from the stress of everyday life. So once you are done with your mundane duties, you would probably like to unwind by watching something. So entertainment segment forms a crucial aspect. Now, the entertainment function of mass media has both positive and negative effects. The low quality of content is often criticized by others, like helping people experience newer events, stimulating emotions and helping people pass their leisure time shows how important the function is. Then again, television shows also help people to view certain events that they would not be able to take part. For example, if a coronation ceremony is taking place in England, sitting here in India, we can watch it. We can see how the Republic Day celebrations takes place in New Delhi by sitting in corner of Mumbai. So television will let you know how certain events that would otherwise have been not possible for the audience to receive it directly. Television does the job of transmission. Then you have mobilization. Now, mass communication functions to mobilize people during the time of terror. So, for example, think back to the Mumbai terror attacks. Now, regardless of your association with the incident, the Indians felt that the attack was an attack to the nation, and people found the news. They followed the news until Kasab was found and tried and prosecuted. So with instant access to media and information, we can collectively write the same events taking place in real time somewhere else and thus mobilize a large population of people about a particular event. For example, the online broadcast by the news channels is an example of internet proactivity. So when the terror attacks took place in Mumbai, you could see a particular channel, specifically NDTV, was letting out details. So some people condemned it by saying that the moves of the security personnel were being openly relayed in television and that could have formed as a hindrance, but that was not it. So while Mumbai police was actually investigating the bombing, the news channel community was posting photos of the witnesses and they were trying to help and identify the culprit, as a result of which I think a 10 or 12-year-old girl could finally pinpoint that Kasab was the one who shot it. So people felt they were making a difference, and that is one of the primary functions of mass media. Then validation. Apart from sensationalizing the news, scintillating the audience, media also seeks to validate the status, the norms of particular individuals, movements, organizations, or products. So the validation of a particular people or group serves to enforce certain social norms. Now, media validates particular cultural norms while diminishing differences and variations from these norms. So, for example, a great deal of criticism focuses on how certain groups are promoted and others are marginalized and how they are portrayed in mass media. Now, theories of mass media. The earliest theories of mass media which were propagated were found in the Western theories like Siebert, Patterson, Cram, and the Four theories of the press. Now, these were termed as normative or structural theories by Maxwell in the sense that they were mainly expressing ideas on how media ought to or can be expected to operate under prevailing set of conditions and values. So each of the four original or classical theories is based on a particular political ideology or regime. Now here we will be not only dealing with the four classical theories, but we will be going beyond it. So the first is the authoritarian theory. Now, according to the authoritarian theory, mass media, though not under the direct control of the state, had to follow its bidding. So even now, you find in China, the Chinese community cannot directly transmit messages as they want. They have to abide by the dictums of the fascist society. So under an authoritarian approach in Western Europe, the freedom of thought was zealously guarded by a few people, and they were concerned with the emergence of a new middle class whom they thought to be revolting, and they thought that the effect of printed matter had a great impact on the thought process, and hence they chose to curtail the thought process. So steps were taken to control the freedom of expression. The result was a complete advocacy of the dictatorship. Now this theory promoted the zealous obedience to hierarchical superiors and reliance on threat and punishment for those who did not follow the censorship rules. Now as a result of which censorship of the press was justified on the grounds that the victims of the state took precedence in the transformation of the message. So the state controlled the freedom of expression. Now this theory stemmed from the authoritarian philosophy of Plato, who thought that the state was safe only in the hands of a few wise men. Now Thomas Hobbes, a British academician, also argued that in order to maintain order in a sovereignty, an individual's objections were to be ignored. Then Engels, a German thinker, further reinforced the theory by stating that freedom came into supreme right only under authoritarianism. Now the world has been witness to the authoritarian means of control over media by both dictatorial as well as the democratic form of government. So even in India, if you write something against the government, you will be pulled up. And so be it dictatorial government like North Korea has stringent rules on what has to be published or not. So you need to adhere under the dictums, media needs to adhere under the dictums and prescriptions of authoritarian fascist state, and this is the authoritarian theory. The next theory is the free press theory. Now the movement is based, as the name suggests, on the free press or the freedom that an individual gets, and there is an absolute advocacy against the concept of reason. So the basis of the theory dates back to the 17th century England, where the printing press made it possible to produce several copies of a Bible at a very cheap rate. So the state was thought as a major source of interference on the rights of an individual and his property. So libertarians regarded taxation as a individual and institutional threat. So popular will or vox populi was granted precedence over the power of state. So recently, if you read the news, you find that Jerusalem, the holy place of the Christians, are being shut down, and this has never happened in centuries. And why they are shutting? Because the Israeli government has passed a bill in the parliament that they want to put a taxation on the church. So this is not being taken kindly by the Orthodox Church members. Now advocates of free press theories were the 16th century philosopher John Locke, then John Milton, the epic poet, then John Stuart Mill, who was an essayist, and one of his prime essay was on liberty. Now Milton in Areopagitica in 1644 referred to a self-writing process if free expression is permitted, that truth and false allegations crumble. In 1789, the French, in their Declaration of Rights of Man, wrote, "Every citizen may speak, write, and publish freely." Now, out of such doctrines came the idea of a free marketplace of ideas. So George Orwell defined libertarianism as allowing people to say things you do not want to hear. Now libertarians argued that the press should also be a fourth estate, that is, the press should be a watchdog of democracy, and that things which the government does not like should not be restrained, and the public has the right to know the ongoing. So what the theory offers in sum is a liberty or a freedom of expression to the person, that he or she will use it without misusing the power of social responsibility. Now we come to the theory of social responsibility. The social responsibility theory was used by critics, propounded by Wilbur, Schramm, then Siebert and Patterson. Now, in their book of Four Theories of Press, they stated that pure libertarianism is antiquated, outdated and obsolete. So basically what these people were doing was they were going against or critiquing the free will theory, the free press theory. They advocated that the need for its replacement by the social responsibility theory. Now, under this theory, as said, this theory can be said to have initiated in the United States by the Commission of the Freedom of Press 1949 Act. Now, the commission found that the free market approach to press freedom had not only increased the power of a single class and had not served to the interests of the well-off people. So the emergence of radio, the emergence of television, the emergence of film suggested that there was a need for the government to be accountable for some reason. Now this theory provided some obligation on the part of media to the society. It was a judicial mix of self-regulation, state regulation, and therefore high professional standards were hugely imperative in this theory. Now social responsibility theory thus became the most modern variation in which the duty of one's conscience seemed to be the primary right for a free expression. So whatever you wanted to provide, you could do so, provided you did it with a collective sense of social responsibility. Then we come to the fourth theory, which is the communist theory. Now, this theory is developed, it's also known as the Soviet Union theory. Now, this theory was developed by Marx and Engels, and then this was a theory which propagated that the ideas of the ruling class are the ruling ideas. So it was thought that the entire mass media was saturated amongst the bourgeois ideology. So what happened was, in this, the concept of Marxism was strongly prevalent. So for example, if today I give you a mango, what would you do with the mango other than consuming the mango? You would probably try to process the mango and make it into different forms of edible product, and for that you set up your factory, you engage your laborers, you give them wages, and by selling the finished product you reap a huge revenue, and then you part with a minuscule amount as wages to the laborers. So it was thought that this entire theory was being saturated with bourgeois ideology. Now, Lenin thought of private ownership as being incompatible with the freedom of press, and that modern technological means of information should be collectively monitored so that people can enjoy a freedom of press. Now, this theory also propagated that the sole purpose of mass media was to educate the masses and not to give them information. The public was encouraged to give feedback, as it was only way through which the media could keep their interest. So this is basically the monitoring. The rich were getting richer, poor were getting poorer, but everyone seemed to be satisfied. Now, then we come to the development communication theory. Now, under this theory, the underlying fact behind the genesis of this theory is that there can be no development without communication. So, the classical theories which we have done previously, uh, these classical theories legitimize capitalism, but under the development communication theory, or as the word suggests, development support communication theory, the media undertook the role of carrying out positive and developmental programs, accepting restrictions and instructions for a free state. So, what happens is, it was no longer under the dictums of the government, but media started propagating that under this theory, the media can subordinate themselves to the political, economic, social, and cultural needs. So now what is happening here is that because the media can engage itself with the social, economic, and political and cultural needs, the development of communication and development journalism came into being. Now, UNESCO thoroughly supported this theory, but the weakness of this theory is that development is often construed to be a part of government propaganda. Why? Because obviously government is financing the development. So then again, it would push you back into the previous four theories. Then you have the democratic participant media theory. Now this theory vehemently opposes the commercialization of modern media and its top-down non-participant character. So, according to the democratic participant media theory, there is a need for access and a right to communicate is strongly stressed. Now, bureaucratic control is strongly decried in this democratic participant media theory. Then you have magic bullet hypodermic needle stimulus response theory. Now, under the magic bullet hypodermic needle stimulus theory, this theory came into existence after the First World War. Now, it propounded the view that mass media had a powerful influence on the mass audience and therefore it could deliberately control or alter the people's behavior. So the main mediating factor which is considered responsible for the effect is that selective exposure and selective perception and retention. So because this theory thinks that the mass media has a powerful influence on the audience, so there is a people's tendency to expose themselves to those mass communications which are in tune with their attitudes and interests. Then there is selective perception and retention. So here people's inclination to organize the meaning of mass communication messages according to the message which is already viewed. Then we have one, two, and multi-step theory. Now in one-step theory, it simply states that mass communication media channels should communicate directly to the mass audience without the messages being filtered by the opinion leaders. Now in two-step theory, informal social relationships plays a very important part in modifying the manner in which the individuals are selected. So the theory indicates that the ideas which flow from the radio and newspapers to the opinion leaders, and from there they pass on to the lesser and inactive parts of the society. So the informed social groups throughout the process have a role in influencing people, and they definitely help in molding the way the selected content gets transmitted. Then in multi-step theory, the theory is based on the idea that there are a number of relays or repeated transmission in communication flow from one source to a larger audience. Then we have uses and gratification theory. Now, this theory was propounded by Katz in 1970, and it is concerned on how people use media for the gratification of their needs. Now in this, they have used Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He is a psychologist, and it propounds the fact that people choose what they want to read or see, and the different media competes with each other to satisfy people's needs. So if a particular news channel is focusing on a particular opinion, the other news channel will try to counter provide opinions. So in the hierarchy of needs, there are 5 levels in the form of a pyramid, where the basic needs such as food and clothing form the base, and similarly the self-actualization goes to the highest up of the pyramid. Now the fulfillment of the lower level of needs leads to individuals seeking satisfaction, and from there they keep on climbing the ladder of hierarchy until they get self-actualization. So basically, this is the uses and gratification theory model. So here you have your audience and the selective use needing gratification. You have surveillance, identity, relationship, and diversion. So when you view something, you see if it's media source, there is a need to be gratified. If yes, then there is a continuous use. Now, critical interventions of this theory is, what do media do to the people and what do people do with the media? Now, based on that, many theorists came up with specific needs. For example, Kurtz and Gervais thought of cognitive needs, affective needs, personal integrative needs, social integrative needs, and tension releasing needs of media. Then McQuail thought that people use it to see certain things like the library storage of movies will enable you to keep on watching it whenever you feel like using that media. So now in this, the use and gratification theory is being encompassed, according to Rubin and Benz, by the VCR technology. Now with the VCR technology, you could use it to store your movies, you could watch your music videos, you could use exercise tapes, you could rent movies, you could let children view children's movies, you could shift the time, socialize by viewing with others, and critical viewing was there. Then you have the spiral of silence theory. Now this was propagated by Elizabeth Noel, and this theory states that media publicizes opinions that are mainstream, and people adjust their opinions according to the perception to avoid being isolated. So this particular case of singer so-called molesting the child, while it's clearly seen, some people choose to stick to the grounds while some people choose to differ. So individuals who perceive their opinion as being accepted will express it, while those who think that they will be laughed at or they feel like minority will suppress their views. Then innovators and change agents are unafraid to voice different opinions, but there is also a fear of isolation. Then also you have your media dependency theory. Now it was developed by Ball, Rockich and Flaw, and the key idea behind this theory is that the audience depend on media information to meet their needs and ideas, goals, and social institutions. So the degree to which they influence by number and centrality to question the social stability is seen as, do media create needs? Do people turn to media to achieve the gratification and satisfaction of the needs? Or are media personal capable of responding to the personal, social, cultural, political needs. In other words, you question whether media is your friend or foe. So with this, we come to the end of our presentation. So basically in this unit, we have seen how information and technology plays a crucial role. We have learned about popular media and mass media, the differences between them, the various roles that media plays along with its evolution, and we ended it up with media theories. Thank you once again.